You went to law school, and between sort of initially planning to do media and IPR, you eventually moved to something that's hyper mathematical in nature, which is tax law. So how did that transition happen?
Failure, I think, is the answer.
So if you had to break it down for our audience, what exactly is Casedo and what is the main problem that it's solving?
Well, so Casedo is a platform for bringing together multiple documents into one space, multiple interrelated documents.
Does Casedo also track certain data points and metrics to allow you to better, analyze the bundle you're creating or the documents you're probably feeding the system?
No, it is on our roadmap to build in more metrics into the system. But our guiding principle with Casedo is simplicity. It's designed to get out your way and to not do too much in many ways.
I want to perhaps go to the origin story, right? Once you sort of had the idea that you wanted to build something out like Casedo, I know you talked about building out a team, etc., etc. But what was the process of conceptualizing it? Just if you could break that down for us. And the reason I'm asking is because a lot of lawyers know there is a problem that exists, and they sort of also know what solution might fit, but they don't know how to really, walk that road and come to a feasible solution that I can explain to like a third party.
Yeah, well, as I say, for me, it started with building an animation, a video that I could show people. I could say, look, this is what it would do. And I looked back at that video the other day, and it's pleasing, but surprising perhaps, how similar it is to what we built.
So there are a lot more tools on the market that sort of help you highlight, annotate, bookmark, and bring documents together, particularly PDF. What is the main differentiator that Casedo has?
So the main differentiator is Casedo is built around the idea of multiple separate documents together.
One last question, which is, since you've been both a lawyer and an entrepreneur and have had a side hustle, so to say, right? What are the three things for somebody who's trying to build out something of their own as a side hustle while also being a full-time lawyer?
I think the first thing is to really have a clear vision of what you want to do. I think if you're trying to do something on the side, there's not much space for I'm not sure. Secondly, I think hugely helps, and I think the one thing that's made it work for me is that there is this massive synergy. Right? I mean, Casedo takes a lot of my time up, but it also saves me a lot of time. I mean, if I didn't have Casedo, I would be much slower at my job. Third one, make sure it's something you really enjoy, because you're not going to find that extra time and energy to do it unless it's a real passion, I suppose.
Hi, Ross. Thank you so much for coming here today and for agreeing to do this interview with Prolawgue.
Hi, Shreya. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So for everybody who's joined us today, Ross is a barrister at Old Square Tax Chambers. He's also the founder of this legal tech company called Casedo, and we'll dive more into what Casedo does during the course of the interview. He's also an Oxford graduate and has actually studied mathematics and philosophy. He's also been a filmmaker at one point of time. So there's like a diverse set of things that Ross has sort of put his hands in, and it seems like a great transition journey. So Ross, let's start from the beginning, right? Like perhaps your time at Oxford.
Oh yeah, a long time ago. I went to Oxford, straight after school, really because I didn't know what I wanted to do, which is probably a recurring theme in my life. So I chose the most academic subject I could do, because that's the kind of stuff I always enjoyed most at school, and dived right into abstract maths and logic and epistemology and metaphysics. So I mean, Oxford's a great place to study. It's a beautiful place, and they do everything so well there. So yes, but of course I came out of it knowing no more about what I wanted to do than I did when I went in.
I see. So then after Oxford, what was the next step? Like, I mean, what was
like everyone I know quite a few people who studied philosophy, and all of them left university not knowing what to do. I think it's the nature of studying philosophy is that you don't find answers, you find questions. So I left, and I sort of drifted around for a bit. And my hobby had always been making films. You know, I'd always been an interest of mine, and so I just kind of was doing that for fun whilst I tried to figure out what to do with myself. And one thing led to another. I started making films for people, little sort of bits and pieces, and I got more and more into editing. So I started working as an editor essentially, mostly independent stuff and documentary news. I ended up working a lot for sort of Al Jazeera and various news networks like that. But at the same time, also making my own films on the side. So I made a couple of shorts and a feature. Again, it's probably spread myself too thin. It's the story of my life.
So, I mean, before we jump on to the next stage of your life, I do want to take like a pause here and sort of get a better understanding of why did you choose filmmaking? Like you said, there was an interest, but did you have like a director? Was there a movie? Like, was there an early influence that sort of drove that decision?
I mean, I was sort of, a film nerd from my mid-teens onwards. I watched everything and anything, and just really enjoyed the medium. And I've always done creative things and feel a need to sort of build stuff. And so films are a great opportunity for that, and a great way to do it collaboratively too, which is nice. What I found was the technology side of it I enjoyed as well. Perhaps in the end, to my detriment, I ended up doing more tech work than creative work, because I found that was an easier career path for me. So I ended up doing online editing and color work and things like that at the sort of higher end. And moved away from the creative side. But the original idea, we want to tell stories. You want to be involved in making beautiful pictures and that sort of thing. So it was just something I've always enjoyed. And
sure. So from filmmaking, which is a lot more creative and doesn't really have boundaries, at least in my mind, how did you move to something like law?
Well, I think what happened is there was a bit of me. The bit of me that did maths and philosophy at Oxford, the technical bit that wanted something a bit more academic, and I found myself reading, economics for fun. Like there was a bit of me that was like looking for something more academically challenging, and as I say, I'd probably drifted into the sort of technical side of filmmaking, so was not doing so much creative work, and I just felt I needed to try something new. And I bumped into somebody who used to be a journalist, and they just finished their pupillage and become a barrister doing media law. And I thought to myself, let's stop making films about people who do cool things, and let's do something interesting myself. Not that filmmaking isn't interesting, but I was ready for a change and a new challenge. And I thought, I'll become an intellectual property barrister, because there I can combine my media and tech interests with, arguing, which I've always liked, and a new academic challenge. So I just very quickly actually made a decision to do it and signed up for law school. And it took me about a week between talking to this person and signing up for law school. So it happened quite suddenly. I think the pressure. I think I was obviously very ready for it. Back to law school, that was quite fun.
You went to law school, and between sort of initially planning to do media and IPR, you eventually moved to something that's hyper mathematical in nature, which is tax law. So how did that transition happen?
Failure, I think, is the answer. I foolishly, I wanted to do IP at the bar, and there's basically 4 or 5 chambers that do that. So I applied to those first, which was a terrible idea because I was awful at the interviews and not properly prepared. And it took me another year and a half of trying to get into various places. And before I got an offer of a place to finish my studies, because we have to do a pupillage here for the bar, so you finish your studies as a pupil in a set of chambers. And I think also over the course of that program, of that period of going to law school and applying for different places and doing some work experience and figuring out what the bar was all about, I realized actually I wasn't necessarily going to enjoy media and IP law any more than I would commercial law generally. And so I ended up in a shipping firm doing shipping law for a year for my training. Which I really enjoyed, but they didn't take me on either, so more failure. And my last chance, I managed to get a place to finish my training at a tax set where I am now. And so they took me on for a 6-month trial period, and at the end they offered me a place in chambers, and that's where I've been ever since. And so tax was, as much of I'd always seen it as an area of law that from afar I thought that might suit me, the maths, the technical, I'd like that, but I'd assumed I would need some experience of tax, some knowledge, and I had none at all. I've always barely even done my own tax returns properly. So but I thought, let's, what's the worst that can happen? And as it happens, tax, although not great, chat with your friends, is very interesting to study and to do, because it covers a huge range of law, from property and trust law to commercial law. It's a family law in there. And it's very fast moving because we get new legislation every year to look at and to work with. So it's good. It's good fun as a lawyer,
So, you've worked in the same place since the beginning of the career, right? Like, what are the major changes you've seen in the profession over the last, since you've started working? That'll be a massive period of time.
Well, the UK bar doesn't change very fast, right? If you want, I work in the beautiful Lincoln's Inn, where across the road we've got the old Chancery Court, where Dickens wrote about. Right? This is if you want things to change quickly, don't come to the bar. But at the same, so in one sense, not much. But of course, the biggest thing that's happened has been COVID and the pandemic. And when I came into practice, it really was uncommon for people to work paperlessly. There was a lot of printing going on, and that has changed a lot, I think, over the last 2 years. I think because the technology was already there. Same way, video calls. Like when I joined Chambers, you'd either meet in person with your clients or you'd have a call on the phone. No one did video calls. But the technology's been there for years. I've been videoing calling my in-laws who are in America for like every week since like 2005. This is not new technology, but there's been this acceptance that, we can use video calling. We can use digital bundles for going to court. So to bring the papers together to send to the judge, we don't need to print out 15 copies of this 3,000-page bundle that no one's ever going to look at. To prepare for trial, you just do it digitally. So there's been a huge shift over COVID of accepting that, I think, and also accepting home working, because at the bar we're all self-employed pretty much, basically. We're not like working for a firm of solicitors, so none of us have a boss, and so we come to Chambers because we want to access maybe the libraries and the inns, but again, more and more of that's online, and so a lot of people come to Chambers because they like to and because they're expected to. Because I think now everyone's a lot more comfortable with people being at home at least a couple of days a week.
So if I can go back a little bit, because you said you were doing a lot more technical work and you were working more on editing technology and the likes when you were doing filmmaking and film editing. I'm just trying to get a sense of what it felt like coming to law, which I assume at that point of time was not using any kind of technology whatsoever.
Yeah. Well, from a sort of tech point of view, this is why I started Casedo, is because as an editor, I've never been good with paper. I've always been messy. I lose the stuff. I can't read my own handwriting, etc. And that wasn't a problem as an editor because you work with computers to edit. And, I had very powerful machines with multiple screens. And, a normal job would be, here's a couple of terabytes of data on a hard drive. And I would pull that all into an editing program, sort it all out, jump around it, and, work on it for the next few weeks or however long the project was. And that was all very possible and dealing with a lot of data. And when I came to law school, the first day at law school, they say, bring a bag or bring a couple of suitcases, and you bring the suitcases they give you a stack of books, and then they give you all the course papers printed out. And I was just like, no. And I left them there because what was I going to do with that? Right? They were also all available online. But the reason they gave you printed out was just lots of people, most people found it was the easiest way to access them, because jumping through so many documents on your computer you can get lost very easily. So people were still doing that. And I was just like, and I had, a little 11-inch MacBook Air. As I was like, everything has to happen on this screen. And I just made it happen because otherwise, I don't know what wouldn't have been able to do it. But everyone else was.
Yeah, so is that the only reason you went paperless, or do you have like some other story, or there was a trigger point at some level while you were practicing?
No, so I just never. Paper was forced on me to a certain extent when I went to law school and when I went and worked for some of my training, and every time I would just basically. I'll try it occasionally and be like, no, still, this just doesn't work for me. I'm just not organized on paper. So I think that was for me. I just said I never accepted it, but I felt I was pushing against the tide in a way I don't anymore. When I said that big change, I felt back then that everyone was like, well, just use the paper. Why are you being so annoying? Especially if you're doing like a mock trial, mock advocacy exercise, and, you need to be able to flip between the documents fairly easily. And so actually, for those things, even through up until I had Casedo, effectively, I still would print things out for advocacy because flipping between things was just impossible any other way. And I think that was a lot of what was keeping people to paper, perhaps. But yeah, no, in my head, there was no chance I was suddenly about to start carrying around ring binders again.
So how did you materialize Casedo? I assume you were working on some other tools before that would have been available on the market. But how did you sort of go around the journey of creating and developing a tool right from the scratch?
So as I said, I started off with the problem, which was I was like, I want to do. I've been sent, even you've been sent very few papers for school. It was, 100 pages across half a dozen PDFs. And I was like, I had to work on those and read them and understand them, and they cross-relate. And I was like, well, I want to do that digitally. And I assumed right off the bat that, a PDF editor, Acrobat, or even Preview or whatever, would be able to do that. That you'd be able to open up multiple PDFs at once and sort of in a sensible way. And I'm good at learning software. I looked at that. You can't do it. They're all about opening up a single document at once, really. You can use tabs, but they're still then, once you shut them down, they're all closed. And it's that basic problem of, I want to jump back to that other halfway through that other document I read 20 minutes ago. How do I find it again? And so I started looking in the market and just Googling and researching various different PDF tools to try and find something that would suit, a very basic problem, and couldn't find it. And so I started designing what I wanted in my head, just for fun initially, just because it was for me a mental problem I wanted to solve. I was like, well, if it doesn't exist, what should it look like? If I could design it, and I suppose that harks back again to when I was a video editor using video tools. I was constantly looking for better ways and more efficient ways of working with video and solving workflow problems. If you're dealing with some quite complex workflows, moving around film processes around teams and thinking about how the software could be better. So I was used to thinking about how software could be better, and I just applied that to a simple sort of, and essentially I was thinking what I want is a video editor for PDFs. I want to be able to do exactly what I used to be able to do with video, thousands of video files. I want to be able to do it with a dozen PDFs, a very simple version of that. And so I designed it, and what I ended up doing, actually, because I started explaining this to people, and no one had a clue what I was talking about, which is one of Casedo's perennial problems, actually, explaining what it is until people see it, they don't get it. And so what I ended up doing was I animated the software. So I know how to, my previous skill set allowed me to build an animation of what Casedo would look like, which I could then show to people. And that's what really got the ball rolling. Just a couple of minute animations saying, look, here's what it would look like if someone was using the app I want to build. And then people go, aha, I get it now. That looks great. And from there, it was a question of trying to build a team, that could form the core of a business that would enable us to raise a bit of money and try building it. And at that stage, I had really no idea what it would cost to produce this software. And we were just sort of trying to, it was all about seeing whether this was plausible and seeing whether and I knew that I needed, a team to support me with it, because obviously I'm only part.
So if you had to break it down for our audience, what exactly is Casedo and what is the main problem that it's solving?
Well, so Casedo is a platform for bringing together multiple documents into one space, multiple interrelated documents. So the problem it solves is if, for example, somebody sends you an email and it's got a dozen attachments and they say, oh, can you check out the below, see the attached, I want you to answer this question about these documents. And this is a common, it's not a specifically legal problem, but it's a very common legal problem. As a lawyer, I'll often get an email, see the attached documents, I want to know whether I've got a case. And those documents will involve a claim form, perhaps some letters, some correspondence, a contract, all sorts of various, maybe some photographs. And it's not enough just to read one of them and to have a view about it. You need to read them all, and then you need to look between them and see how they interrelate. So you want to have them all open at once, and you want to be able to organize them into a coherent structure that makes sense. And then you want to be able to add to them as you keep going. So as you might then want to look at some legal references or some case law and bring all those information together into one place. And what I wanted is I wanted to be able to open one file and bring all that information up. I didn't, it's no good opening the contract and then closing the contract and then opening up the claim form and closing that and then opening up the letter and closing that, because you get lost very quickly.
Yeah. And
you can't find the important bits. So Casedo is a platform to enable you to bring all that information together into one place, to move around it fluidly, to compare things side by side, to annotate it in context.
And does it also allow you to sort of share it? So usually in trial, you have to allow the other party as well as the judge to move around the document alongside you. Does Casedo also solve that problem?
Yes, it does. It solves it in a couple of ways. One, everybody in the trial could use the same Casedo file. Obviously, that's people might not want to use Casedo for various reasons. They might not know about it. So the most common way Casedo solves that problem is that you can use it to create your bundle, your brief, I don't know what term use in India, but so we in the UK we refer to the trial bundle, which is the collection of documents that both sides and the judge all have a copy of, and it's got the same page numbers, and you can say go to page 553 of the bundle, and that will be this document. So trials have forever in the UK been based around a trial bundle, the bundle of documents that each side has and can reference. And one of the things Casedo does almost by accident is allow you to create a trial bundle very, very easily, because you bring all your documents into it, you can organize them in whatever order you want. And then at the click of a button, you can add page numbers and you can add a table of contents and you can export it. So you can build a trial bundle in Casedo, and then you can export it to a normal PDF, but a bookmarked PDF with the table of contents and hyperlinks and page numbers. You can create it and you can send that to the judge and send that to the other side. So then they will have a conventional PDF bundle. And what we've seen over the course of the pandemic is most of the courts have created their own directions for what a PDF bundle must look like. And Casedo is able to create a court compliant bundle at the click of a button. So we've got lots of people who use Casedo just for that process. They're solicitors and they need to create a bundle for a hearing. So they bring everything in Casedo, organize it the right way, export it to a bundle, send to everybody, and then everyone's got the right papers. The way I'd work tends to be, I've already got the papers in Casedo because I've been reading them and understanding them. So when it comes to making a bundle, I just hit export. But wherever you start, because Casedo is it doesn't tell you how to work. It's just a way of pulling stuff together.
Just because this is a very common issue in India, and I would assume a lot of developing countries that the courts were facing, is that of course they started this entire function of bringing things online and being able to file documents online. They're usually file size restrictions. So does Casedo sort of solve that issue as well?
No. So Casedo, the files you put into it will be the files you get out of it. File restrictions seem to be going away. Those file size restrictions seem to be receding. I mean, it's not so common now. You get that 20 megabyte limit for emails, but you do sometimes still with the online file systems. No, so we don't help with that. I mean, Adobe Acrobat has a fairly comprehensive optimization feature for reduce, because you kick out one PDF and then you can reduce that down to size. So if you need to, but no, it's not something we do.
Right. So there are a lot more tools on the market that sort of help you highlight, annotate, bookmark, and bring documents together, particularly PDF. What is the main differentiator that Casedo has?
So the main differentiator is Casedo is built around the idea of multiple separate documents together. So a normal PDF editor is based around, you open a PDF, a single one, and you can annotate it, and you can add other PDFs to it. So you can merge it with other documents and bookmark those differences. But once you've merged them, they become one document. Whereas in Casedo, you can bring a bunch of documents into the space and they retain their individual identity. So you can move them around and drag and drop them into order, rename them, and then you can reorder them at some point. You can drop them onto different folders and move those folders around. So it's much more I was going to say it's much more like a film editing software in that you can put the data in whatever order you want it, and it's not a case of you can merge PDFs together into one in Casedo if you want them to be a single document, that sounds like perhaps a small change, but actually it's quite significant because it affects the way you think about the different elements in your project and the way you can bring things together. And you'll end up bringing, you're not going to necessarily want to merge a whole bunch of legislation with your, correspondence with your solicitor, but you might want to have them in the same place and be able to see them side by side. Yes, and the other big difference is easy comparative viewing. So being able to link between separate documents and being able to see separate documents side by side and that sort of thing. So it's a subtle change, but it goes right to the heart of what Casedo is. It's a different kind of interface for looking at multiple PDF docs.
Does Casedo also track certain data points and metrics to allow you to better analyze the bundle you're creating or the documents you're probably feeding the system?
No, it is on our roadmap to build in more metrics into the system. But our guiding principle with Casedo is simplicity. It's designed to get out your way and to not do too much in many ways. In the sense of the reason that the paper and the ring binder have been so ubiquitous and so hard to get rid of is because they're so simple and flexible. It's a pen, it's some paper, it's a ring binder. You can put whatever in it, whatever order. It doesn't have a load of extra clever tools that get in your way or make things difficult. So, and Casedo very much takes that ethos. So yes, we've got plans to add some layers of sophistication in terms of being able to review what you've done. And there's already some very powerful tools there in terms of being able to see your annotations and see them all in one place and that sort of thing. But the aim is, yes, we with our product development, we're always thinking about, well, if we do that, how do we not clutter our interface and make this difficult to use? Because the idea is it should be, as easy to use if you've got 3 documents or 300. It's if I just want to read a single PDF, I'll open it in Casedo just as I would if I've got hundreds. It's the barrier to entry is very low.
So since you're talking about simplicity, how does Casedo really integrate with my current system if I'm using, let's say, Microsoft? Like, does it come as a plugin, or what's the entire mechanism?
So, Word documents go into Casedo in the normal way. So they're treated just like another document you can bring into Casedo. Same with emails. So you can be dragging your emails from Outlook, and with those come their attachments, which will be dropped in as separate documents into your Casedo file. So in terms of doing documents in, Casedo accepts those file types, and they can be incorporated into your project. I think one of the things people often don't realize about Casedo is we're like an old-fashioned desktop app. For various reasons to do, we made a decision early on that maybe some point in the future we will, but for now, we're not going to hand our client data. Our client's data, we're primarily a legal tool, is sensitive, and they have very high standards for how their data is stored. And, we don't need to get involved in that. So we're a desktop app that runs locally and accesses files wherever you put them. So if your files are stored locally, you can pull those in. If they're stored on a cloud storage, you can pull those in from there. That's up to you. And similarly, Casedo then saves all its data in what we call a case file, a .case file. So when you create a new Casedo project, you save that somewhere on your system or in your cloud storage or wherever you're happy having it. And that case file has bundled within all the data you've imported. So you've got one file that you can open for whatever matter, and then everything you put in there is there. And you can share that file, you can copy it, you can back it up, you can email it to somebody else. It's just like a Word document. So again, it's a very simple and some might say old-fashioned sort of file and interaction system, but it's very flexible and fits in with a lot of different workflows.
So I want to perhaps go to the origin story, right? Once you sort of had the idea that you wanted to build something out like Casedo, I know you talked about building out a team, etc., etc. But what was the process of conceptualizing it? Like, just if you could break that down for us. And the reason I'm asking is because a lot of lawyers know there is a problem that exists, and they sort of also know what solution might fit, but they don't know how to really, walk that road and come to a feasible solution that I can explain to like a third party.
Yeah. Well, as I say, for me, it started with building an animation, a video that I could show people. I could say, look, this is what it would do. And I looked back at that video the other day, and it's pleasing, but surprising perhaps how similar it is to what we built. So it started, in my case, with me really, and I spent a good year more thinking about the app, refining that video, doing drawings to think about how it might work before we built anything. So I went into the development process. Eventually we raised enough money. We put a team together. We found some backers, and we raised enough money to build an MVP. And then we've actually used a third-party company called Dutrix, who are a UK-based development organization, and they've been fantastic. So they handled all the sort of the tech side, and for me, it was a case of long meetings with them, talking through the exact requirements of each feature and how it needed to work and how the platform worked. And we built that up, from a very basic. Our first iteration, you could import documents and look at them. That was it. And so we built it up, using the agile workflow. But what's been, I think, to answer your question, what's been underpinning that is from a very, I do a lot of thinking and visualization of how it needs to work. And I get, that plays into my maths and logic training, and because you've got to, when you're trying to work with developers, you've got to be very systematic. You can't go, I wanted to do this general thing. You have to be thinking, well, there's 4 options to begin with, and 4 ways, 4 buttons you might press, and then these are the consequences. And the more you can think about those details, the easier it is to actually build the thing.
And once you sort of have an idea and you have some interest, it's also usually a concern as to how do you really go about raising money. So what was that story like for you?
Well, so one of the people on our team, so one of the first people I pulled in to help me was someone I knew socially, and he's a serial entrepreneur. Actually, largely in media, actually, not in legal or in tech, but he was a serial entrepreneur who knows about raising money and understands that process. And so, that was one of the core criteria for my team, was I need somebody who understands about raising money. So the answer is I lent very heavily on him. But yes, it involves a lot of meetings, a lot of explaining things to people, and a lot of rejection. I think if you're going into any kind of startup situation, most people aren't going to want to risk thousands of pounds on your idea. But there are people out there who have an appetite and have enough wallet to take those risks. And if you can find them, and if you can impress on them, a combination of the sort of drive and determination, the actual innovation, having an actual innovation is good and was certainly very helpful to us. I mean, no one we showed it to said, "Oh, I've seen that before. That can be done in this," or at least they didn't after they'd seen the video. They all said that before they saw the video. But then once they understood what we were doing, they realized it didn't exist. And then I think the other thing that was helpful was, we're addressing actually a very huge market. Casedo is such a basic tool that potentially it could be on every desk, every computer on every desk in the world. It's not specific to any one particular use case. And so that gives you, we're in a good place to say we're trying to get a very small place of a very, very large market, which helps that commercial case. But yeah, it's just a question of talking to people and getting people with good good contacts books to open them up to you, get you in front of people. And one of the big difficulties we had was a lot of people say to me, "Well, are you going to quit being a lawyer?" Which I was doing this in parallel with my law school and my first years of practice, so I wasn't prepared to say I was going to stop being a lawyer, and frankly, I think it's a good thing that I haven't quit, because it brings a lot to our product and to the design that I use Casedo all day for my legal work, and the rest of the day I'm doing Casedo stuff. So I'm our first user, I'm our actual customer, and I think that's been helpful, for development and understanding software, but also for convincing people that what we're doing, it has value.
So I'm kind of glad you brought it up, because how do you really manage doing all of this in the 24 hours of the day that we all get?
Do I manage it? You do the work that you've got to do, and you try and sleep and eat in the gaps. The Casedo team is, as we've gone on, as we've progressed and grown, my role has shrunk from founder CEO, where I was spearheading the whole thing. I'm really now mostly just do product and vision and strategic direction, and I'm involved in all the other levels of things, but I'm really as an oversight. So Jim, who should now, he's the one working longer hours than me on Casedo, because he deals with everything else. So I'm and I think that's probably plays to my strengths. I'm not very good at I've never had a real boss. I'm not a very good boss. That's why I'm a barrister, not a solicitor. I wouldn't last as a solicitor. So I think that plays my strengths as product lead, and allows me to focus on what the product needs, and also talking to our customers. So I do quite a lot of demos still, and other kind of customer engagement to sort of feedback and communicate. I think one of the things we do well is we have a good dialogue with our customers. So we spend a lot of time talking to them about what they like and what they don't like about Casedo, and then that feeds very, very much does feed back into the development process.
So I'm trying to understand what is next in store for Casedo, right? Like you have a product, you spoke about how you're trying to build in a few more features. In terms of jurisdiction and market and features, what are the next steps for Casedo?
Well, I mean, I feel we're like 5% down our roadmap, okay? But that's because I spend too much time dreaming about how I want to make it better. So there's a long way to go. Some of that is just refining what's there. There's some aspects of the software that I just think should work a bit better, be a bit nicer, give you a few more options and that sort of thing. There's quite a lot of that, but the big issues are collaborative working. So, Casedo, you can collaborate on it in the same way you can with the Word document, which is actually perfectly fine for most situations. But there's definitely a demand out there for people to be able to work on the same documents at the same time, and to have genuine sort of group working on a single file. And so that's a feature set we're just beginning to work on and expand. I think there's a huge potential there for Casedo. The other thing is tie-ins with other services. So, kind of an app store, I suppose, where Casedo can plug into various other services out there and develop better sort of ways of leveraging those services. And then there's a bunch of sort of just power tools within the app itself. So, at the moment, we've got a plan of a better way of bringing web pages and web assets into your Casedo project, which I think would be really good, and things like that. Plus, we want to the engine behind it. So the efficiency and power of the software to display PDFs fast and fluidly is something we're constantly working on. So we're always pushing in multiple directions at once. And say I think I'm allowed to say it's far from good enough.
Oh. Okay.
We must make it. We can and will make it even better than it is.
Mm-hmm. Is it available for people in the APAC region right now?
Yeah. I mean, you can just go to our website and download the free trial, 30-day free trial from our website, and that gives you it fully featured for 30 days. And after that, you can buy a license for $12.50 a month if you want to. And as I say, I mean, we've got customers all over the world using it because, even if we won't be a problem in India, but even if English isn't your first language, there's very few actual words in Casedo. You can import foreign language documents and they will display just like they normally will, and you can annotate as you normally would. So it's really that's not a barrier, I think, to use. So we've got people using it everywhere.
Okay, just one last question, which is, since you've been both a lawyer and an entrepreneur and have had a side hustle, so to say, right? What are the 3 things for somebody who's trying to build out something of their own as a side hustle while also being a full-time lawyer?
I think the first thing is to really have a clear vision of what you want to do. I think if you're trying to do something on the side, there's not much space for "I'm not sure," because that takes up a lot of time, and also will send you down dead ends, and you may then end up wasting time. So there needs to be that. Secondly, I think hugely helps, and I think the one thing that's made it work for me is that there is this massive synergy. Right? I mean, Casedo takes a lot of my time up, but it also saves me a lot of time. I mean, if I didn't have Casedo, I would be much slower at my job. So there's this great synergy between my side hustle and all the time I'm working on my law, I'm gaining useful insights that I feed back into the Casedo project. So, and when I'm working on the Casedo project, I'm networking in the legal sphere. And when I'm meeting people and customers, I'm networking, which can feed back into my legal practice. So there's huge synergies between those 2 projects. They're not, although they're in some ways very different. What is a third one? Make sure it's something you really enjoy, because you're not going to find that extra time and energy to do it unless it's a real passion, I suppose. The law isn't entirely uncreative. There's lots of good opportunities for creative thinking in the law, but it's nice to have something in my work that I'm building, and that I've got a product, some Casedo. I'm proud of it, and I enjoy seeing it improve. And if you've got an urge to build something, you don't necessarily get that as a lawyer, but we do, and that creative thing is important, and I think you need to enjoy it in like that or in some way in order to be able to motivate yourself.
Okay, I mean, all of those three things sound great. I sort of really like the second point about synergy, because I think if you can hack that, then you're constantly motivated to do both. And I hope a lot more people can find that synergy for themselves on their side hustle while doing their main job. Would you have any last parting thoughts to share with us, Ross?
Well, what haven't we covered? No. I mean, never. If don't stop innovating, whether just in law or in some other entrepreneurial activity. I think there's always room for figuring out better ways of doing things, and that's try Casedo.
So we'll definitely put the link of Casedo, as well as is that animation that you were using to make initial pictures available on YouTube? We'll put that link in the description as well.
If it's not, we'll get you it.
Great.
Great. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so we'll sort of put all of that together in the description link to this video. And thank you once again, Ross, for taking out time on a work day. And I assume it's in the middle of your work day, so that is really nice of you to sort of take out this time to speak with us today at Prolawgue. And yeah, that's it from me.
Thank you very much, Shreya. It's been a pleasure.
Same here. Thank you.